All right, hello. This lesson is going to be on while loops, the start of chapter 4. Before we dive too far into it, I got a warm-up question for you from the previous chapter. So grab out a notebook, try this question, pause the video, and then unpause to see the answers to this warm-up. Okay, so I always recommend drawing little buckets. So like basically we have three different variables in this one, and we have an x variable, a y, and a z. And then just initially, x starts with -4, y starts with 3, and z starts with 0. All right, so we can do the check. So if x is less than 0, which it is actually, so that's true. So true or what doesn't even really matter, what comes over here. Um, and I'm not sure about the order here, so I'm guessing it'll do this, and then it'll AND it with that part. So this OR is going to be true, and then AND Z equal 0, which is also true. So we have true and true. So it will enter here. And then importantly, it does these lines in order. So X is going to be set to whatever Y is currently plus Z. So that's 3 plus 0. So X is no longer -4. It has been replaced with 3. Okay, so this line is done. And then y is going to be whatever z is, which is currently is 0, and x is now 3. So y is going to be the z bucket minus the x bucket. So y is going to become -3 at this point. Okay, and now this line is done, and then z is going to be whatever x is currently, which is 3, plus whatever y is currently, which is -3. And actually, it won't change there. It'll get overwritten, but it'll get overwritten at the same value of 0. All right, so that's our warm up. And then what we're doing in chapter 4 is about loops. Okay. And there's actually two different types of loops. And today we're going to learn one called while loops. All right. And so loop is kind of like what you think it would be, right? If we just draw a picture of it, it's just something that loops around and goes over and over and over again. And for us, it's code that repeats. All right, so we're going to have again two types of loop: while loops and something that's called a for loop. All right, today we're just going to learn a while. Okay, so it's just some ways you can use loops. Um, if you want to do the same operation to multiple different like students or employees or something. So like if I had a bunch of employees, I can just loop through each employee and raise all their pay by 25 cents. So I have to do that same operation again and again and again. I can just write a loop that goes to every employee and gives them an extra quarter per hour or whatever it is. All right. And then another one is you can like do summary data. So if you wanted to find the sum or the average of some numbers, you can use a loop to sum up all the information and then get kind of a summary at the end. So there's actually a ton of different uses for loops, and really that's what we're going to be doing in this chapter is adding loops to our programming toolbox, right? We did if statements, we've done strings, we've done basic variables, and now we're learning another thing called loops. Okay, and so the reason why we have two loops is a while loop is you're going to keep repeating until some condition is met, right? And so really the purpose of a while loop is when we are unsure of how many times the code will loop, all right? If we know that we want to do it, say 10 times, right? We want to generate, say, 10 random numbers, then we would use the for loop, right? The for loop is for like if we know how many times something needs to run, then we'd use a for loop. But if we don't know how many times, that's what while is for, right? And a really good example of this would be like a login, right? Like a login thing is just going to keep prompting you to log in until you type in the right thing. Okay, so we don't know if it's going to run 1 time, 2 times, 5 times. So if we don't know how many times it's going to run, that's the purpose of a while loop. All right, and so here's another example of maybe like a video game one, like a RPG or something like that, where we could keep looping as long as they want to fight, right? So the user can choose to fight or run away. So this code, right? So the while loop has an open and closed curly brace, and then whatever's inside of here is going to run while the want to fight is true. So the first time it'll come here, it'll be true. It'll take some health from the player, take some health from the monster. It'll ask them if they want to continue, and then it'll change it right here to be whatever they type in. So it'll scan whatever the user types. Then it'll come back up here and check again, like, hey, do we want to keep fighting? And as long as it's true, it'll keep doing this code over and over and over again until infinity, until the user finally says, false, I don't want to fight anymore. Okay, and here's one more visual of a while loop. So it's kind of like an if where you have a condition that's this part has to be either true or false. This has to be a true or false statement, just like it was with an if. And then what happens is if it's true, it'll come down and run the statements. Once the statements are done running, it'll go back up and check the condition again. And if the condition is still true, it'll go down here, run the statements, come back up, check again. It'll keep going around and around and around until it's false, at which point it'll go to the end of the while's curly brace, wherever the while ends, and then start running the next set of commands that come down below the while's curly brace. All right, so I'm going to load up Eclipse here and do an example for you. Okay, so a good example of where you might want to use a while loop would be like a simple guess the number game, right? And so I kind of got the code set up here a little bit with scanner, and then I'm doing a secret number. I think this would be 0 to 99 if I did this right. And maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll make it 0 to 9, and then I actually go plus plus to the secret number to make it 1 to 10. I think it should be 1 to 10. And I probably should say guess the number between 1 and 10 just to help them out a little bit. Okay, and then I'll scan their guess, and then if they guess too high, say too high. If they guess too low, say too low, and otherwise I'll say they got it. So let's give this a shot here quick. If I run it, and I want to say like 6, and that was too low. Okay, so you can see it only ran once, right? So like to me, this is a perfect example of you want to keep running the code while some condition is true. Okay, and so what I usually do for a while loop that actually is kind of a good way to do it is basically to get the code the way I want it without a loop, and then just put inside the loop the lines that I want to run all over again and again. Okay, so if you think about it, like you could kind of pause the video here and think, which numbers do I want to repeat? Or sorry, which lines do I want to repeat in this code? Okay, and hopefully you realize I don't need to make the scanner a bunch of times. I don't need to make the secret number. I'm just going to do that once, right? So really, this is where my loop is going to start. So I'm going to go while, and then I'm going to put the part where they guess, where I scan their guess, and then the feedback I give them. All of that I want to do over and over and over again. All right, and so then really what I got to find out is like, what is the right condition here? I want to keep doing this code while what is true. Okay, so pause the video and see if you can figure out what the right while check would be. Okay, so hopefully we figured out while the guess is not equal to the secret number, I want to keep going. All right, and so let's say while they haven't guessed it correct, keep looping. And then the only problem with this is guess isn't created till down here, which is kind of right. I don't want to scan it until I ask them this question. So basically all I'm going to do up here is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to create guess up here, but I'm going to give it a number that'll guarantee that I go into this loop, right? So I don't want to do something like 5, because if the secret number happened to be 5, the while would evaluate to false, and then it would just skip over this. All right, so I'm going to put it to something, since my number is 1 to 10, I could make a little note here of that. This is 1 to 10. I'm going to make it something I know it can't be, so that guess will certainly not be equal to the secret number the first time. The code will run, okay, and then each time guess will get overwritten with whatever the user enters, and then it'll keep doing this loop until this is no longer true. So once guess becomes equal to secret number, the loop will break and the code will stop running. Right, in this case, I don't have any lines. I guess I could put something here, game over, right? So anyways, the loop will end and then it'll run this line once they finally get it. So let's see if I can run it here. Do an example. I'm going to guess the number. I'm going to guess 5. That's too low. So I'm going to guess 7. That's also too low, 8, and I got it, game over. Okay, so this is just a really good example of a while loop because that time it ran 3 times, but in theory, we don't know how many times it's going to run. All right, so that's kind of the purpose of while loop is just to keep running, um, you know, while some condition is true. All right, that's it for our introduction to while. Thank you for watching.